Imagine being so dangerous that the most powerful country on earth considered you enemy number one. A man whose face is recognized by millions, even by people who know little about history. His image appears on t-shirts, posters, murals, and graffiti across the globe. To some, he is a hero. To others, a ruthless revolutionary. For some, a symbol of freedom. For others, a symbol of oppression. But regardless of where people stand, almost everyone agrees on one thing. He changed the course of history, and perhaps the most remarkable part of his story is that it didn't begin with politics. It didn't begin with war. It didn't even begin with revolution. It began with a young Argentine doctor who simply wanted to see the world. This is the story of Ernesto Che Guevara, the man who became the face of revolution and one of the most famous enemies of the United States in the 20th century. Ernesto Guevara was born in Argentina in 1928. From childhood, he suffered from severe asthma. His attacks were so intense that there were times when he could barely breathe. Many believed his illness would limit his future. Instead, it made him incredibly determined. He played sports, he loved reading, he became fascinated by philosophy, politics, and medicine. Eventually, he enrolled in medical school. His future seemed clear: a career as a doctor, a comfortable life, a family. But one journey changed everything. In 1951, Guevara set out on a motorcycle trip across South America with a close friend. Together, they traveled thousands of miles. They visited mining towns, poor villages, leper colonies. And they witnessed extreme poverty affecting millions of people. What he saw deeply shocked him. He began to believe that the problem was larger than individual governments. In his view, the entire system was unfair. A small elite controlled enormous wealth, while millions struggled to survive. It was during this journey that the future doctor began transforming into a revolutionary. A few years later, fate brought him to Mexico. There, he met a man who would change his life forever. Fidel Castro, a Cuban revolutionary preparing to overthrow the government of Fulgencio Batista. After a single night of intense conversation, Guevara decided to join Castro's movement. A doctor became a soldier. In 1956, a small group of revolutionaries sailed to Cuba. The mission nearly ended in disaster. Most of the rebels were killed or captured shortly after landing. Only a few survived. Che was one of them. For the next several years, they fought a guerrilla war in the mountains of Sierra Maestra. Guevara quickly became one of the movement's most capable commanders. He was disciplined, relentless, and uncompromising. His enemies feared him. His comrades respected him. Then, in 1959, something happened that many thought impossible. The revolution succeeded. Batista fled the country. Cuba fell into the hands of Fidel Castro and his revolutionary forces. And among them stood Che Guevara. His rise to international fame had begun. He became a government official, a diplomat, a key architect of the new Cuban state. But at the same time, he was becoming a growing threat in the eyes of the United States. Why? Because Cuba was moving closer to the Soviet Union. At the height of the Cold War, this was a direct challenge to Washington. American corporations lost major investments in Cuba. Political tensions escalated rapidly. Then came the Bay of Pigs invasion, an attempt to overthrow the Cuban government with U.S. backing. The operation failed. For Castro and Che, it was a major victory. For the United States, it was a humiliating setback. After that, Che Guevara became known around the world. To some, he was a symbol of resistance against imperialism. To others, he was a dangerous extremist. But Che had little interest in remaining a government official. He dreamed of global revolution. He believed revolutionary movements could spread across continents. So in the mid-1960s, he left Cuba. First, he traveled to Africa, then to Bolivia. And it was there that the final chapter of his life began. Che attempted to organize a new revolution, but this time, things did not go as planned. Local support was far weaker than he expected. His guerrilla movement struggled to gain momentum. Meanwhile, the Bolivian military, with assistance from the CIA, launched an extensive manhunt. For months, they tracked his group through the mountains. Eventually, they found him. On October 8, 1967, Che Guevara was captured. The following day, he was executed. He was only 39 years old. It seemed like the end of the story. But in reality, it was only the beginning of his legend. His death transformed him into a global icon. Photographs of his final moments spread across the world. His image took on a life of its own. A portrait captured by photographer Alberto Corda would become one of the most famous images in human history. Today, billions recognize that face. The irony is impossible to ignore. A man who spent his life fighting capitalism became one of the most commercially reproduced figures on Earth. Yet the debate surrounding him continues to this day. Supporters see him as a man who dedicated his life to fighting injustice. Critics point to executions, repression, and the harsh methods used by the revolutionaries after taking power. The truth is more complicated than either side often admits. Che Guevara was neither a perfect hero nor a simple villain. He was a man of his time, a man whose ideas inspired millions, and whose actions had profound consequences. But one fact remains undeniable. Few individuals of the 20th century left a mark on history as large as his. He began life as a doctor, became a revolutionary, turned into one of America's most famous enemies, and after his death, evolved into a symbol that transcended generations. That is why the story of Che Guevara continues to fascinate people today. Because it is not merely the story of one man, it is a story about power, conviction, revolution, and the price people are willing to pay for their beliefs. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story about the people who changed the world. And tell us in the comments, was Che Guevara a hero who fought for justice, or a dangerous revolutionary whose legacy remains controversial? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.